Okay. Hello, everyone. This should hopefully be a short introduction on just installing the software. We went through this on Friday in class, uh, but I realized not everyone had the hardware in front of them to do this, and some of you would probably also like to do this on a more powerful non-mobile computer. So we're going to go through this. So if you haven't already, you'll need to go to Canvas, go to the class, obviously, and the announcements, and install the VPN by following the guide that is available through San Jose State's website. I'm not stepping through this because they have pretty good instructions. Um, but you will need the VPN. You don't need it to install the software, but you will need the VPN in order to run the software as far as actually opening a simulation. This software does utilize a license server, which is hosted at campus. So you need to be VPN'd into the campus network in order to be able to check out one of the licenses. You can think of it like a library. The software goes up to the licensing server, knocks on the door, and says, "Hey, can I have a license?" If there's one to give, the software will give you your license. But you need to be able to get to the library first. So that's the metaphor for the licensing scheme here. Incidentally, when you're done using the software, be sure to actually close it so the software will give the license back so somebody else can use it if needed. We shouldn't run into a problem with the number of licenses we have much, but we might. So remember to always, if you're not using it, if it's not running, close the software so you're not hanging on to a license that you don't need. But we'll get to that in a minute. So you'll want to go to Canvas and the announcements and go to the Google Drive link I provided. There are a couple different files. They are the same with one exception. Both of these are for Windows installs, by the way. I have not yet, but I will be putting the Linux installs in here as well. But in any case, so star CCM plus underscore CAD clients 17.04.008 underscore 01 underscore win64. One of them has a dash R8 at the end. We want the one without that. What the R8 symbolizes is a slightly more precise version, what is referred to as double floating point precision. And that shouldn't be necessary for what we're doing. And we're probably going to need all the memory we can get. So we're going to download the other one that is not double floating point precision. This one is mixed precision. A couple of important things use double floating point numbers, but a lot of the things will only use single floating point numbers for this version of the software. So might take you longer to download this than might take longer for you to download this than is being shown here. That should be okay. Just wait for it to finish downloading. Once it's done downloading, you will need to extract it. I'm using 7-zip. You can use whatever file extraction utility you so desire. Right, okay, that's why that says that. Okay. So extract the file. It'll create a new folder probably. Once you've extracted it, we're going to need to go into here and actually run the installer. This may or may not work. Actually, this just occurred to me because this isn't my usual account on this computer. We'll find out. So run the installer. It's the only non-web link or non-PDF in the root. Can I right-click, run as administrator? There we go. You will need administrator rights to install this. It is a full program installation on your system. Better. Usual license software stuff. This is important. We do not want this. We want to use custom or advanced installation. We do have a couple of things that need specifying within the advanced options. You could either check or uncheck this box. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to uncheck it. Pick a install location. Usually this is just under program files under Windows. I'm going to leave it as default. That should be fine. The defaults here should be fine. We want SimCenter Star CCM Plus for sure. The documentation. You could also include the CAD clients if you wish. I won't be, by and large, explicitly using any of these, but just because I can, I'm going to go ahead and install literally all of it. You probably want the viewer just in case. Virtual reality, it's entirely unnecessary. But because I like installing all the things, I'm going to check it anyways. This one is important. We want to leave it as a network install. If you did not get this option, you probably clicked the Express install by accident. Go back, click the Advanced install until you get this option. So network, configure this machine to access a network license server. This is the server that is hosted at San Jose State, a network license server. Next. Okay, this is important. So we need the port number, which is 1999 at COE-ME-SAE vault. Let's see here, .sjsuad.sjsu.edu. I'm pretty sure about that. Let me just double check really quickly. COE, so 1999 at COE-ME-SAE vault.sjsuad.sjsu.edu. That looks correct. This name is unfortunately slightly incorrect. If they fix it, we will need to change this. But if they don't fix it, it doesn't really matter too much. It's just a web address for the server. Okay. Hold on a second here. Let me turn that off just to be safe. Okay. That's selected. Oh, wait. No, this should not be checked. This should be unchecked. Next. It is, if you're not actively connected to the VPN, it's probably going to give you an error right here. I bet you it's about to give me an error. Because if you're not connected to the VPN, it won't be able to find the license server. If it doesn't let you proceed, you will need to actually connect to the VPN. So, the VPN is Cisco AnyConnect, vpn.sjsu.edu. It will ask you to sign in. You sign in as a student, because you are students. I sign in as an employee, because I am an employee. Be sure to select the right one. By default, it opens up to employee. If you select student, you'll see it opens up a new window. So select the right one and sign in. I don't know if I typed that correctly. We'll find out. I did not. Better, I typed that one correctly. You know, usual two-factor authentication stuff. Okay, I'm connected to the VPN. Next. Hopefully it's talking to the server. Give it a second, pretty much. It does not serve a valid license. It does. It really does. We're just going to hit next because we verified that this did in class last week. The defaults here are probably okay. You'll need to allow *CCM Plus to run through the firewall. You probably aren't sharing an install directory. That should be fine. You probably want a shortcut on the desktop. And most of you are not using multi-user machines, so creating shortcuts for all users should be just fine. So the defaults are probably okay for this. Next, it just reviews your options, what you're installing, where you're installing it, the server that you're connecting to, what you're installing, or the additional components you're installing, and how much disk space it's going to require. This requires a little bit under 10 gigs fully installed. And we tell it to install. Parts of this installation will take longer than others. Just give it time. Let it do its thing. Depending what your installation media is, depending on a number of things, this may take more or less time, depending on your system. Unrelated, and don't mind me as I look at my other monitor over here. You may wish, and I'm not going to go through these steps, you may wish to install, while we are at it, the ANSYS suite. If you Google SJSU ANSYS, let me get that out of the way. You can see that there is a link to sjsu.edu/ECS/software. And they have a link for downloading ANSYS and LabVIEW and a couple of other things: MATLAB, SolidWorks, Autodesk, etc. You'll note *CCM is not on this list because that is unique to our department, which is not listed here. So I do recommend downloading and installing ANSYS. If you're on the VPN, you should be able to check out its licenses. It has instructions for downloading and installing. You can go ahead and follow those on your own, at your own discretion. The installation's proceeding. It says it succeeded. That's good. And there are shortcuts on the desktop. That is also good. Done. That almost concludes, the installation tutorial. I'm going to check a couple of things here. You will have probably at least 2, maybe 3 shortcuts. One of them is for SimCenter *CCM Plus. One of them is for SimCenter *CCM Plus Viewer. And in my case, I have SimCenter *CCM Plus Virtual Reality. The second 2 are not ones that you need right now. Probably never need the VR one. The viewer you might need. For the moment, we want the first one. Double click and run. This opens the actual software. This should look familiar to everyone from last week, hopefully. As a test to make sure that it's installed correctly, your VPN is working correctly, etc., we're going to attempt to very briefly create a new file. So, the little page with the plus sign is the new file button. Upper left-hand side, click on it. I'm going to explain some of these options right now. I'm going to explain them again in a later video. But for the moment, these are mostly the options we will be using. This needs to be corrected, actually. Apparently, it didn't like that. Okay, so process options. This is basically how much of your processor are you using. For the moment, we're going to leave this as serial. What serial means is you are using one logical processing thread. One CPU core, basically. It gets a little bit more complicated than that depending on your hardware, but think of it as one CPU core. Not one processor, one core. Most have between 4 and 8 to 12 cores, depending on make and model, depending on how modern it is. Extremely high performance server based processors might have as many as something like 48 cores. We're just using one for now. So serial is what we use. If we wanted to specify more, we could say parallel on local host. This means on the current computer where we're currently running, use more than one process. If you put in 2, it'll use 2 threads, 3 threads, etc. Best practice is to generally put in how many cores your computer has minus 1 or 2. We're going to leave this on serial. These other 2 are more fancy for if you're using a cluster of computers that are going to work together to solve the problem. I don't personally know how to use those. We won't be using those. They are utilized quite extensively when you have large problems in industrial settings, though. For the moment, we are going to leave this as serial. If you're running Linux, they have GPU support. I'm not running Linux. I don't know how this works. I'm not going to use it. If you want to look into it, feel free to check the help documentation. We are not using the Microsoft Job Scheduler for this. That can remain unchecked. We are going to use a default license, which is a single core license. Server connection mode is default. That's fine. Rendering is on your machine you're using, local. If it's local, then those things are just going to remain grayed out. You don't need to change those. And this command line will be populated with stuff based on these selections. You'll notice, despite saying it in the installer, this did not seem to like our server. It says 1999 at flex.cdadaptco.com. This is not what we wanted. So, what we're going to do is we're going to have to tell it to look somewhere else. So we're going to tell it to, using an argument, we're going to tell it to look somewhere else by using the argument lic path. So server space dash lic path space 1999, and you can see it's populating the server as we go through this. At coe-me-sae vault dot sjsu.ad.sjsu.edu. Now, that could get a little bit tedious to remember and type every time. We can save configurations so you don't have to type it all out or change them all every time. What you can do here is type a name under saved configurations. I'm going to type sjsu serial and hit save. So now, if I want to recall these settings, I can just use the drop-down and click sjsu serial, and it will load these settings. Let's find out if this works. Hopefully it does. Click OK to actually attempt to start the simulation with these settings, or open or create a simulation file. Go check out a license using these settings. And you can see it gives you a couple of status things down here at the bottom. It appears to have succeeded in checking one out. It checked the server, it found one, it opened the file, it named it star1, just a default name. There's some other information on what it's using, the host computer, stuff like that. And it tells you how many licenses you checked out. For the moment, if this says anything more than one copy of anything, something has gone wrong. Close it and do it again until this says one copy of either CCMP Suite or CCMP Power. Okay. that concludes the installation and starting tutorial. The next one will actually be focused on using the software. I'll talk about that video in that video.